Okay, students, so here is your first lecture on GEC105, Purposive Communication. And our topic for today is language and communication. So, first question, what is language? So, first definition of language is it is a dynamic human capacity. It is a skill. It is a capability of a human. So language, so a person can have multiple language, French, English, Tagalog, etc. Okay, so that's why it is a dynamic human capacity because it is not easy to acquire a language. Okay, so next is language is the method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured and conventional way. So let's emphasize the word, a method of human communication. Without the language, you cannot be successful in your communication process. Okay, that is the key to communication. So, next is language is a system of communication used by a particular country or community. For example, in the Philippines, we have our own language which is Tagalog or Filipino. Other communities in the Philippines have their own language. For example, is the Visaya, the Ilocano, etc. Okay? So, we have the nature of language. So, a language can only be called a language if it has a system of rules, or what we call the grammar. Again, grammar is the system of rules of a language. Okay? Then, a language sound system is what we call phonology, how the word sounds. Okay, so next is if it has a vocabulary or a lexicon. Okay, yung vocabulary or lexicon ng isang language is very important because without it there will be no language. So without these three, actually, these are the requirements for identifying a means of communication as language. Without these three, there will never be a language. Okay? So, without these three, walang language. Okay? So, next, when people use language, they can understand each other because they belong to the same speech community. When two person or more understand each other, it means that they belong to the same speech community. Okay, for example, here in Laguna, we can understand each other because we belong to the same speech community. People who belongs to the same speech community share the same set of rules in the language system. Okay, so language acquisition. What is language acquisition? Language acquisition is the process, okay? Take note of the word process of acquiring a language that is used by a community while a person grows up. Okay, so this is the language, the process of acquiring a language while you grow up. Okay? But what do we call the language that we acquire while we are growing up? So, ang tawag natin doon sa language na yun is the mother tongue. Okay? The mother tongue is the language acquired while a person is growing up. Or, we can also, it can also be referred as the first language. Okay? Mother tongue or first language. Next is second languages. Second languages, these are the languages that are acquired by studying formally in school or informally on their own. Okay, so yung mga languages that you acquired in school, for example, here in the Philippines, our second language is English. Okay, so yung language na natutunan natin sa school or informally on our own, for example, is Korean because we love K-drama. So we like to learn their own language for us to understand without reading the subtitles in these dramas. So when we learn their own language, Korean became our Korean language became our second language. Okay, so what is the process of learning a second language? Yung process is what we call the language learning. Okay, yung second language is the language that we learn formally or informally. Then yung process of learning those languages is what we call language learning. Okay, the process of learning a new language. Okay, I have this set of words here in this table, and do you think meron bang mali dito sa mga words na to? Like, for example, number 1 is aeroplane and number 2 is airplane. Do you think aeroplane is correct or wrong? Or airplane, of course, it is correct because we are familiar with that. Aeroplane is actually correct, okay? Because this is the British spelling of airplane. How about the colonize and the colonize? We usually use the colonize with a Z, but yung colonize with an S is also correct. It is also a British spelling of colonize. Then next is the defense with a C and defense with an S. We usually use the word defense with an S, but also yung defense with a C is correct because it is a British spelling of defense. Then next is the enrollment with a double L and enrollment with a single L. So both of it are also correct. And next is the honor with a U and honor without a U. So both of it are also correct. So, what happens if you, for example, who speaks a mother tongue in English, go to work in China where the resident speaks Mandarin or what we call Putonghua and a little bit of English? Will you be able to communicate with the Chinese? So that is the question. The answer is yes, okay? So you will be able to communicate with the Chinese. It will be challenging for you and your Chinese friends to try to understand each other. It will be a challenge, but eventually you will be able to communicate as you slowly learn each other's language. And as you slowly learn their language and your friends slowly learn your language, it is what we call the language contact, okay? So we call that language contact. You are using your own language together with the language you have learned slowly, which is for example, in this situation, you can speak your mother tongue, for example, Filipino, and your second language, which is your English, and then you came to a foreign land, which is China, with they are using their own language, what we called the Putonghua or Mandarin. So as you slowly learn, as you slowly acquire or learn their language, we call that language contact. Okay? So language change is the result of language contact. Remember that. Yung language change is the result of language contact. So language is indeed a complex human capacity. Next, let's move on to the elements of language. So, yung elements of language, we have 5: the phonology, morphology, semantics, pragmatics, and syntax. So, first is phonology. Phonology is the study of sound, okay? Study of sound. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound, okay? Yung smallest unit of sound is what we call phoneme. Phonology is the study of sound. Remember that. Okay, in modern English, there are 26 letters in the alphabet. In American English, approximately 48 different sounds can be created by these 26 letters. If there are more sounds than letters, that means that some of these letters can have more than one sound. For example, letter T gives us the sound T, as in time. Letter H gives us the sound H, as in home. When combined, there are a couple of different sounds. Some people think that they only get one sound when they incorporate T and H, but they get two. Here are examples. Sound of the word thin, thin, repeat it a few times. Thin, thin, thin. Now sound out the word them, them. Repeat it and think how the TH sound differs from the first example. Thin, them, thin, them. Other examples. Those, third. Those, third. Those, third. This sound is not familiar in all languages. C and H, when combined, give a new sound. Think of the words chicks, torch, chips, etc. The sound is not existing in all languages. That is why many ELLs struggle with it. So pag sinabi nating ELLs, it means English Language Learner. Okay? So exemptions is chick and sheep because they are just borrowed from other language. Okay? So number 2 is morphology. Sorry for the typo. That is number 2. Second, morphology is the study of word formation since it focuses on the internal structure of words. So again, morphology is the study of word formation. Okay? So morphemes are the smallest units of words. Morphemes again is the smallest unit of words. Examples are the words note and book. Each word is a single morpheme. Again, each word is a single morpheme, the note and book. But when put together, it creates another word which is notebook. Okay? This new word consists of two different morphemes. When pluralized, it gives notebooks. So, how many morphemes do we have in this word? Notebooks. Okay, so we have three morphemes. First is the note, second is the book, and third is the S that is combined with the book. Okay, notebooks because it is pluralized with an S. So yung S is another single morpheme. Okay, note, book, and S. Okay, this word contains three other morphemes because the S is considered a morpheme. Next is morphology. When ER is added at the end of a verb, it changes its meaning. However, a morpheme like ER serves two different uses in English. When located at the end of a verb, it creates a noun. But when it does the other function, when located at the end of an adjective. Example is, let's think of a verb like create. No. Like write. So write is a verb. So when we add er or r at the end of the word, we have the writer. So it became a noun. The verb is the word write is a verb. When we add r at the end of the verb, we have the writer, which now becomes a noun. Another for the adjective naman, another function of er is for example is fast. So fast is an adjective which is on its base form, fast. Pero when we add er to the end of the word fast, we have faster, which is now in comparative form. So nagbabago yung meaning ng word. Okay? So meron tayong mga parang kinds or types of morpheme. So you must remember this. So yung lexical morpheme, it has meaning and can stand alone. For examples are man, girl, play. Tawag dito is lexical morpheme. Yung mga single words na can stand alone. Lexical morphemes ang tawag natin dyan. Next is the grammatical morphemes. Pag sinabi natin grammatical morphemes, these are mostly used to specify a relationship between two lexical morphemes or modify one. Examples are prepositions, conjunctions, determiners, etc. For example is yung mga prepositions and conjunctions natin and determiners. Them, he, she, okay? So, these are just grammatical morphemes. Okay, so free morphemes. So this is kind of important. Yung free morphemes, these are lexical or grammatical morphemes since they can stand by themselves. Huwag kayong malilito sa free morphemes and lexical morphemes and grammatical morphemes because these morphemes can stand alone. They are independent. You can use these morphemes because it independently because they have their meaning, okay? They made sense. Examples are nouns, verbs, etc. or lexical morphemes or prepositions, conjunctions, and articles or grammatical morphemes. Pero meron naman tayong tinatawag na bound morphemes. Ito naman yung mga dependent morphemes. Bound morphemes, these are lexical or grammatical morphemes since they cannot stand by themselves. For example, is yung suffixes or prefixes. Since all affixes in English are bound morphemes, lahat na makinakabit nyo sa mga words, which is yung suffixes and prefixes, yung prefixes, yung kinakabit mo sa unahan ng word, and suffixes is yung kinakabit mo sa dulo ng word. For example, ng suffixes is yung ER na ginamit natin kanina. Faster. Suffix is yung ER. For example is prenuptial. So yung pre na kinabit sa nuptial, we call that prefix. Okay? So itong mga to, yung suffixes and prefixes, we call that generally affixes. So these are bound morphemes. They cannot stand alone. Okay. So, example, fair. Please be minded of the color legends in this example. Yung yung free morpheme again is the morphemes that can stand alone, and yung bound morpheme can't stand alone. Yung free morpheme is in orange legend and yung bound morpheme is in green legend. Okay, so fair is a free morpheme. Likeness is a word with a free morpheme, and yung free morpheme dun sa word na likeness is yung like, and a bound morpheme is yung ness. Okay? Likeness, like is a free morpheme, ness is a bound morpheme since yung ness is a suffix. Okay? Another example, carelessness has one free morpheme which is yung care and two bound morphemes which is yung less and ness. Carelessness. So we have three morphemes on that word, carelessness, one free morpheme which is care, two bound morphemes which is yung less and ness because they can stand alone and they are just suffixes. Okay? Okay. Third part, semantics. Semantics is the meaning, the element of language that refers to meaning. Okay? The meaning of the words. The meaning of the whole sentence or paragraph. That is semantics. When people say all kings are males, people who hear it agree that the word king refers to a male who rules a country. If the same people hear the following sentence, they will tell them that it is incorrect. All bulls are females. So, that is incorrect because we know that bulls are a gender of a cow, which is a male. Okay, a male gender of cow, bulls. These people know that bulls refers to males, which makes the sentence wrong. How do these people determine this conclusion? Knowledge of meaning, or what we call semantics. Okay? So, when people say Nancy postponed her wedding, they know that Nancy put off her marriage. They understand that to postpone means to put off. Language is sometimes ambiguous, which affects the meaning of comprehension. Pag sinabi natin ambiguous, it is not clear, it is vague, malabo. When people say, we saw the Philippine history professor, they wonder if the professor teaches Philippine history or if he is from the Philippines. Okay, so meaning, semantics is an essential part of the language. Speakers of any form of speech and learner of any form of language need to get the semantics of that language to communicate with others successfully. Okay, so let's go to pragmatics. Pragmatics is another element of language which refers to the language use. Kung paano maginamit, okay, yung language. Okay? So this element of language focuses on how language can be affected by context. Many speakers of language know what to tell depending on the situation and the people they are speaking. For example, when people hear this statement, there is fish on the table, they might interpret it, will you cover the fish on the table? So, pragmatics, speakers of language modify their speech based on the knowledge of their listener. People talking to adults or business associates might use a different language from what other people use with their toddlers. They normally simplify their language when speaking to young children. So, for example, you have a younger sister or a brother, a younger sibling. Will you use your formal language or highfalutin words to them when talking or when conversing? Of course, no, because you depend your language use depends. It depends on who you are talking to or who you are talking with. Okay, so that is pragmatics. Pragmatics, like most elements of language, takes time to understand it fully. It includes knowledge of the language, culture, people, etc. before people can perform well in this language area. Lastly is the syntax. The syntax is related to grammar because it focuses on sentences and their structure. Okay, so sentences and structure is what we call syntax. The English language has some word order that people have to follow when making essential language. The basic sentence in English consists of subject, verb, and object. S or SVO. So this is your mga grammar rules. Okay? So syntax yan. So kung paano natin pinagsusunod-sunod yung word, we have the rules on that. We also have the subject-verb agreement, etc. So that is under syntax. So yung SVO as represented in the simple sentence, I eat dinner. Okay? And a very good example of the SVO, the subject and the verb and the object, I eat dinner. The I is the subject, eat is the verb or the action word, and the object is the dinner. Okay? The sentence is grammatically correct because the words are arranged in order. So, syntax, the sentence every night I eat dinner at 7 o'clock and then I go to bed follows a correct word order in the English language. However, when someone said dinner I eat, could you understand that? Dinner I eat. The listeners will immediately understand that the sentence does not follow the correct word order. Yes. Differentiate these examples. The girl waters the plant versus a water plants the girl. So, see, if you are not following the correct word order, the subject, the verb, and the object, it is giving another meaning. The girl waters the plant. The girl waters the plant or dinilagay ng babae yung halaman. So, versus a water plants the girl. So, parang ang meaning niya is diniligan ng halaman yung babae. Okay? So, pag binago mo yung order, the meaning is also being changed. Okay? The first sentence is correct but it follows the right word order because it follows the right order rather. But the second one does not follow the proper word order, so it has no sense since it is not semantically correct. It is a reminder that people need to obtain these language components to perform successfully in a new language. They overlap to a great extent but are essential to both the social and academic success of the learner. Again, this language element is difficult because the basic sentence structure becomes a part of a complex sentence that has to be formed correctly to make a sentence. Okay, so let's go to the last subtopic for today, which is the verbal and nonverbal communication. Sorry for the rearrangement of the format. Okay, so first is the verbal communication. Verbal communication. So, yung verbal communication, what is the advantages of using verbal communication? What is its purpose or function? So, number one is verbal communication helps people determine reality. Pag sinabi natin verbal communication, we use as words, okay? Might be oral, might be written. So, people use verbal communication to define everything from ideas, emotions, experiences, thoughts, objects, and people. You might describe yourself as moral, ethical, a night owl, or a procrastinator. So, that is verbal communication. So, next function of verbal communication is that verbal communication helps people determine complex ideas and experiences into meaningful categories. Okay, so you can put your experiences into words. So, consider the number of things people experience with their 5 primary senses every day. They label these people with terms like friends, acquaintances, romantic partners, family, peers, colleagues, and strangers. Okay, you can put everything into words, even the how you feel, um how you label your friends. You can put everything into words. Number 3 is verbal communication helps people shape their attitudes about the world. The way they use language shapes their attitude about the world around them. Number 4, verbal communication helps us think. Without verbal communication, people would not function as thinking beings. The ability most often used to determine humans from other animals is their ability to reason and communicate. So, verbal communication helps us think. Through reasoning, logical reasoning, through communicating with other people, conversing, it makes us think. It makes our brain function. Okay, let's move on to the non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication, it is the non-linguistic transmission of information through visual, auditory, tactile, and kinesthetic channels. Okay, so visual is what we can see through the eyes. Auditory, tactile is what we can hear, and kinesthetic channels is through our actions. Okay, so non-verbal platforms are eye contact, facial expressions, gesture, posture, and the distance between two individuals. Yes, yung distance is also a non-verbal communication element. So, we have 5 functions of nonverbal communication. First is the reinforcement. Actually, it is 6, okay? Sorry for the typo again. 6 functions of nonverbal communication. Reinforcement, support, contradiction, accentuation rather, substitution, and regulation rather. What is reinforcement? Yung reinforcement, the amount of redundancy nonverbal communication adds to the verbal message. For example, you said hi, and then simultaneously you wave your hand. That is what we call reinforcement, okay? Contradiction, the use of nonverbal message to negate the verbal message. For example, if you ask how someone is and they say good, but they roll their eyes or look down at the floor and shrug their shoulders, you know they are actually not good and they have just negated the verbal message they were sending. Okay? Contradiction. Third, accentuation. The use of nonverbal cues to intensify the verbal message. For example, if you speak louder and quickly, you are adding intensity to the verbal message. Okay? Accentuation. Another is when a person is excited because they usually speak loud and their eyes widen, making the message clearer. Okay? For example, you receive a good news. You share it to your friends, and then when you talk in a loud manner with your eyes getting wide open, so they can sense that you are excited, you are happy. That is accentuation. Next is substitution, using a nonverbal action or cue instead of speaking. For example, instead of saying hi or bye, you might just wave a hand at someone. Excuse me. So substitution, you are just substituting your actions. For example, you want to say hi, but you didn't say a word, or instead you just wave. Okay? So that is substitution. When we are not able to speak to a person, we use a nonverbal cue. Lastly is the regulation, the turn taking cues of conversational order. For example, we use hand signals to indicate that we are done talking, it is someone else's turns to talk. Okay? We also use nonverbal signals like looking at the other person as if to say, what do you think about that? Without actually speaking the words. That is regulation. You are continuing the flow of conversation. So, okay, that is the end of the presentation, and that is the conclusion of our lecture 1 in GEC105, Purposive Communication. Okay, so I hope you have learned something from this topic, and if you have questions, feel free to message me. Have a good day.